Okay, so we've got the idle valve hooked up here. I want you guys to make note that there is a diode here. There's a gray stripe. The gray stripe goes to power. Now on these valves, polarity does not matter, but the stripe of the diode does. So whatever side, if you use this wire for power, the diode will have to be set up as so. Just like I've said numerous times before, if you guys buy this whole kit from us, that's already going to be done. You're not going to have to worry about it. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and test it. I've already got it pre-set up on mine, but I want to go ahead and test it so you guys can see it. So that's the valve clicking. I'm going to turn it off. And so our settings are as so. So it's a idle type is PWM 2-wire. We're going to put an open loop. We'll go more on that a little bit later. So valve mode here, this is what we don't know. If, again, I said polarity doesn't matter, but sometimes if you have it flipped around, what will happen is 100 will be 0 and 0 will be 100. So you'll have to flip that around if it bothers you that much. Run valve before start. This basically just has the valve open while you crank it just to get more air in. Our output port obviously is idle. It's not a 3-wire, so we got that off. And so 4 valves are like 50 to 100, I believe, if memory serves. So I always start at 100. We'll know that when the car starts to run, and what happens is we basically will change the frequency until it's no longer noisy. Okay, so now what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the idle warm-up, and remember it's closed loop, so we're going to leave this at 0 for now, and that technically means the valve should be closed. So the valve is barely open. That's kind of how it is by design. So we're going to start cranking this guy up here and see if we get any more idle out of it. Strange, doesn't seem like the idle valve is doing anything. I can't feel it actuating either. Okay, so as y'all saw earlier, the idle valve wasn't doing anything, so I had to go in here and hit it in inverted mode, and now it's actually working. So we can set this value once the car runs. So we're going to turn this down to back to 0 first. That way the valve is off. So the valve should be slightly open, obviously. So we're going to try to turn this up here, and it should stall. And so why it's going to stall is because we're going to be adding so much air through the valve that it goes lean. That's basically as we anticipated. So now we know idle is working. We're going to turn this to maybe 50%. We'll go ahead and burn it and see. Okay, so as you can see, the idle is really high. We got signal noise, not a big deal. We know the problem there. So we're going to start turning this guy down. And so we're going to listen to it. So we got trigger noise. That's because of the distributor and the spark plug wire being close proximity. So we're going to try to see where we can get it where it's idling. So there you go. That's basic idle control right there. We're going to leave that in closed loop mode or open loop mode for a moment. Okay, so now we've got open loop mode working. And so I'm going to kind of go through open loop really quickly on how that works. So all it does is that it basically is just going to do what you command it to. So for instance, if we're at -4, it's going to open at 27%. And because all the numbers are the same, it's going to do the exact same thing. So generally with it being cold, this value will be higher. So it's going to have like a linear curve to it. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, but essentially it should look something like this. So essentially it's going to look something like that. It's not going to be perfect because the valve has a range where it will and will not work. And so keep in mind that you do still have to crack the throttle. You really want the idle valve to do very little work. So once you dial in your open loop table, you can go to closed loop. And how closed loop works is that it basically can make adjustments for itself, but you have to dial in open loop first. Now, this lesson is very important because when you do boost control, it's almost the same thing. You dial in your open loop table to understand the ranges of your controller, and then from there you can switch it over to closed loop. So we'll save that for another time once I actually start getting it dialed in, but there you go. We've got idle valve working. Now we've got to hook up our wideband. So I need some help, guys. What do you guys think about this in terms of routing. So this is the fuel pressure regulator. So we're basically going to have the feed line come up into this rail to this rail. Then here we're going to make like a 180 loop to go into this port. And this is the return port that's going to come up and go into the return line. So I'm going to get my tube bender and I'm going to probably give this like a little bit of a 90-degree bend. That way we can go from here to there without much transition. And so what I was going to do is just drill a hole in here, throw a riv nut in it just to secure it like this. And so here's our idle control valve. This is just kind of obviously a simple bracket, but I was thinking about mounting it like so into the frame rail. Same deal, just put a riv nut on it, drill a hole, put a riv nut in it. And so for the idle air control valve, we obviously have the two hoses that loop through here together. It's going to meet here, so I may end up putting this somewhere closer right here, or even flipping it around, and then one hose in, one hose out.